Russia. Land of boundless forests. Land of golden domes. Land of Tsars and eternal ice. A freezing fog envelops the forest. Thick ice completely covers a lake in winter. A train travels for days without stopping. Welcome to Russia. Welcome to the largest nation on the planet. Known as the homeland of the Tsars, this is an immense land where wolves and lynxes roam in forests that exceed the extent of Canada, and where extreme temperatures sculpt landscapes of ice and fire. But let's start from the beginning. Russia extends for 5,600 miles, or 9,000 kilometers from west to east, covering 11% of the planet's emerged lands. It is so immense that it could contain the United States, Europe, and Australia put together, and there would still be free space left. A geographical colossus that defies any understanding, where distances are measured not in hours, but in days of travel. This vastness manifests itself most greatly through its time zones. With 11 original time zones, although now it officially uses 9, when in Moscow it's 8 in the evening, in Vladivostok it's already morning of the next day. But it is beneath the surface that Russia reveals one of its most surprising secrets. Permafrost covers 65% of the territory. That is, 2/3 of the nation rest on permanently frozen ground. Here, building houses, roads, and railways requires special techniques and engineering that defies extreme cold. In fact, in Siberian cities, cars remain running all night to prevent the engine from freezing. In this scenario of extreme cold, most of Russia remains uninhabited. The average population density, in fact, is among the lowest in the world, with only 9 people per square kilometer or 23 people per square mile. There are vast territories where humanity is only a distant echo, and where nature still reigns sovereign and unchallenged. And it is precisely in these boundless spaces that the taiga exists, the largest boreal forest on the planet. Russia hosts more forests than any other country, and the Russian taiga contains 1/5 of the world's forests. It is larger than all of Canada, extending 4.6 million square miles, or 12 million square kilometers, and hosting wolves, bears, and lynxes in numbers that elsewhere are now only a memory. A green lung that breathes to the rhythm of Arctic seasons. But this nation is also a land of impossible geographical contrasts. It is one of the very few countries that boasts Arctic deserts and subtropical coasts in the same territory. In Yakutia and in the Arctic zone, for instance, cold deserts are found, completely sterile, where ice replaces sand. In Sochi and on the Black Sea, instead, palms, tea, and citrus fruits grow, with a humid subtropical climate that seems to have come from entirely different latitudes. These climatic contrasts, moreover, manifest themselves with temperatures that oscillate by about 180 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius annually, passing from minus 88 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 67 degrees Celsius in winter to 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius in summer in zones like Yakutia. Continuing, in the Soviet period, this immense territory also concealed well-guarded secrets. Until 1991, in fact, there existed dozens of closed cities that did not appear on maps, where nuclear weapons were produced and military research was conducted. Even today, some cities require special permits to enter, heritage of an era where entire communities existed outside of official geography. Even the language reflects the complexity of the nation. Russia uses 6 letters more than the Latin alphabet, and some consonants have soft and hard versions. Learning to read requires months, even for those who already speak the language. And precisely diversity is perhaps the most fascinating characteristic of this nation. Here, there are more than 190 ethnic groups, with Russians being 80% of the population. But they live alongside Tatars, Chechens, Bashkirs, and Buryats, each with their own language, religion, and traditions. Russia, therefore, is much more than a simple country. It is an entire continent. A place that continues to tell its story to whoever visits it. But for now, let's go discover the most incredible and iconic places of this nation. Moscow. The Russian capital extends over 7 hills along the banks of the river that bears its name. The Kremlin is a fortified complex that has seen Tsars, revolutionaries, and Soviet leaders pass through, and encloses within its red walls centuries of power. Red Square, instead, is crossed every day by thousands of people, with St. Basil's Cathedral showing its colored domes that seem suspended between fairy tale and reality. Underground runs one of the deepest metros in the world, built as an air raid shelter and decorated with chandeliers, mosaics, and sculptures. The city counts over 12 million inhabitants and lives in contrasts that are easily noticed walking through the streets, with Stalinist palaces alternating with glass skyscrapers. Here, the winter cold can reach -4 degrees Fahrenheit or -20 degrees Celsius, while in summer, the sun sets after midnight. Lake Baikal. The deepest lake on Earth reaches 5,387 feet, or 1,642 meters in depth. It contains 1/5 of the planet's unfrozen fresh water, more than all the American Great Lakes put together, and widens by 2 centimeters, or about 1 inch, every year. Born from a fracture of the Earth's crust, it extends for 395 miles, or 636 kilometers, through southern Siberia, and is surrounded by mountains that reach 6,500 feet, or 2,000 meters. In winter, the ice can reach 4.9 feet, or 1.5 meters thick, becoming transparent like glass in some points, and allowing one to see the bottom at dozens of meters or over 100 feet deep. The water hosts species that exist nowhere else, like freshwater seals and fish that live only here. 27 islands emerge from its waters, and the largest is inhabited by a small community of fishermen. St. Petersburg. Peter the Great wanted a window on Europe and built it on marshes and islands where the Neva River flows into the Gulf of Finland. 100,000 men worked for years. Many died of hardship and disease, but the city was born. Today, 4 million people live among canals and Baroque palaces, with 342 bridges that connect these islands, and some open every night to let ships pass. The Winter Palace guards 3 million works of art, with corridors miles long, while St. Isaac's Cathedral dominates the skyline, with its golden dome that is the 3rd largest in the world, and decorated inside with 880 pounds, or 400 kilograms, of gold. In summer, there are the white nights, when the sun descends below the horizon only for a few hours, leaving a twilight that lasts until dawn. Kamchatka Peninsula. A tongue of land, 777 miles, or 1,250 kilometers long, and suspended between 2 oceans in the Russian Far East. "160 volcanoes dot the landscape, of which 29 are still active, releasing steam and ash toward the sky. Geysers scattered in remote valleys shoot boiling water to dozens of meters, or over 100 feet in height. In some areas, Forests of dwarf birches and larches cover the valleys, thanks to the fertile volcanic soil, which often creates a green mantle. Brown bears populate these wild territories, gathering along the rivers, when salmon swim upstream to lay their eggs. The human population doesn't even reach 300,000 inhabitants and is concentrated mainly in the capital, Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. Trans-Siberian Railway. 5,600 miles, or 9,000 kilometers of tracks cross Russia, from Moscow to Vladivostok. The complete journey requires 7 days, crosses 8 time zones, and touches 87 cities. Work began in 1891 and ended after 25 years of excavations, bridges, and tunnels dug in the permafrost. The train passes through birch forests, Mongolian steppes, and Siberian villages, where time seems to have crystallized. The track also runs parallel to Lake Baikal for 124 miles, or 200 kilometers, with an external temperature that can drop to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 40 degrees Celsius during winter, while inside the cars, the heating maintains constant warmth. Altai Mountains. Mysterious mountain chains meet at the border between Russia, Mongolia, China, and Kazakhstan. The peaks exceed 13,000 feet, or 4,000 meters, and glaciers feed rivers that descend towards valleys inhabited by nomadic populations. The steppes are covered with wildflowers in the spring, while in winter, the snow covers everything, isolating villages for months and transforming the landscape into a white desert. Different ethnic groups have lived here for centuries, practicing pastoralism and following seasonal migrations. UNESCO has recognized this area as a World Heritage Site for the biodiversity it guards, with various rare species that survive in habitats that have remained almost intact. Kazan. "1,000 years of history intertwine where the Volga River meets the Kazanka River." The capital of Tatarstan hosts mosques and Orthodox churches a few steps apart, testimony to a coexistence that has lasted for centuries. The local Kremlin, a UNESCO heritage site, encloses within its white walls the Kol Sharif Mosque, rebuilt after being destroyed in 1552. Here, moreover, Cyrillic alphabets and Turkish traditions mix. Christian and Muslim holidays are celebrated, and the city counts over 1 million inhabitants. In 2005, Kazan celebrated its millennium of history, and since then has renewed itself with new buildings that have joined the historical ones. The Wedding Palace, for instance, with its futuristic architecture that resembles a Tatar cauldron, lights up at night, which has become one of the symbols of the modern city. Mount Elbrus. The highest mountain in Europe rises to 18,510 feet, or 5,642 meters in the Russian Caucasus. Two twin peaks emerge from the ice and are dormant volcanoes whose last eruption dates back 2,000 years ago. There are also 22 glaciers that slide along its flanks, feeding rivers that descend toward valleys inhabited by local populations. The ascent requires preparation, acclimatization, and respect, and every year thousands of mountaineers attempt the summit. Local guides know every crevasse, every dangerous zone, and accompany them in the adventure. From up there, the gaze embraces the mountain chains of the Caucasus that separate Europe and Asia, and the wind can blow at 62 miles per hour or 100 kilometers per hour. Sochi. "27 miles, or 43 kilometers of coast along the Black Sea, set between the sea and the Caucasus Mountains. The city counts 400,000 inhabitants and lives on beach tourism in summer and skiers in winter. The 2014 Winter Olympics transformed the landscape, leaving sports facilities, new roads, and infrastructure that connects the coast to the slopes. Here, the subtropical climate allows the growth of palms, tea, and citrus fruits, while 25 miles or 40 kilometers inland, people ski from November to April. Stalin had a country house here and came to rest far from Moscow. Today, instead, Russians come on vacation, filling the beaches and strolling along the waterfront. Kizhi Island. An island of 2.3 square miles, or 6 square kilometers, in Lake Onega, reachable only by boat. The Church of the Transfiguration rises with 22 wooden domes, built in 1714, but without a single nail. Every element was interlocked and carved by hand by craftsmen who knew the secrets of pine wood. UNESCO has recognized this place as a World Heritage Site, defining it as an open-air museum where houses, mills, and chapels tell the life of northern peasants. In winter, the lake freezes and even allows reaching it walking on the ice. Veliky Novgorod. One of the oldest cities in Russia, founded in the distant year 859. When Moscow was still a village, Novgorod governed trade routes that connected Scandinavia and Byzantium. The local Kremlin encloses within the red walls the Cathedral of St. Sophia, built in 1050 with various frescoes. Here, the first medieval Russian Republic was born, where citizens gathered in assembly to decide their destiny. Documents on birch bark, found in excavations, show that even women knew how to read and write. Dombay. It is located in the valleys of the western Caucasus, where rivers are born from perennial glaciers. The mountains exceed 13,000 feet, or 4,000 meters, creating a natural amphitheater where fir forests give way to alpine meadows. Here live ibexes, brown bears, and European bison, reintroduced after disappearing. In winter, skiers arrive, while in summer there are hikers who follow paths to mountain lakes. There is also a cable car that goes up to 9,800 feet, or 3,000 meters, and opens onto incredible panoramas. Not far away, on a rocky hill, rises the Christian temple of Shon, which is an ancient 10th century church that dominates the valley and testifies to the historical roots of this mountain region. Murmansk. The largest city in the world, beyond the Arctic Circle. There are about 300,000 inhabitants, despite the sun never rising for 40 days in winter. Founded in 1916 as a military port, it resists temperatures that regularly drop below -4 degrees Fahrenheit or -20 degrees Celsius. The port remains free from ice all year thanks to the Gulf Stream and allows the passage of icebreaker ships which open routes toward the Arctic. It is from here that the hunt for the northern lights begins, and the tourists who arrive are in search of those green skies that dance. Veliky Natural Park. Granite mountains rise in southern Siberia, created by volcanic eruptions 600 million years ago. The park extends for 845,000 acres, or 342,000 hectares, crossed by rivers that carve deep gorges among forests of cedars and larches. Alpine lakes reflect the mountains with waters so transparent that one sees the bottom at 33 feet, or 10 meters deep. Brown bears, lynxes, and wild reindeer populate the valleys, where man can only arrive on foot. The trails lead to strange rock formations, with snow that in winter covers everything for 6 months. Suzdal. An open-air museum where time flows differently. The city counts 5,000 inhabitants and preserves 200 monuments of ancient Russian architecture, distributed over 3.5 square miles, or 9 square kilometers. White churches with golden domes are reflected in the Kamchatka River, and fortified monasteries enclose centuries of prayers and history. Here, buildings beyond 3 stories do not exist, and there has never been any industry. In the Middle Ages, Suzdal rivaled Moscow in importance, governed principalities, and minted its own coins. Today, instead, tourists walk on dirt roads, visit the 12th century Kremlin, and enter wooden houses where merchants and artisans lived. Vladivostok. The Russian Far East ends here, where the city embraces the Golden Horn Bay. Founded in 1860 as a military fortress, it has grown to 600,000 inhabitants, becoming the main port on the Pacific. From the port, fishing boats depart directed to the Sea of Japan and return loaded with crabs and salmon that supply Asian markets. The Ruskia Bridge connects the mainland to the island of the same name, crossing half a mile or 1 kilometer of sea, with spans suspended at 230 feet or 70 meters high. Here, winter brings temperatures below 5 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 15 degrees Celsius, and the sea freezes along the coasts. Ruskayela Mountain Park. A canyon carved by man in the heart of the Karelia region, where for 200 years marble was extracted. The abandoned quarries filled with water, creating green lakes 164 feet or 50 meters deep, surrounded by white rock walls. Today, here one walks on suspended walkways, navigates by boat among flooded caves, and descends into tunnels where the echo of pickaxes still resounds. A vintage tourist train, moreover, connects the city of Sortavala to the park, crossing birch forests and Karelian villages, recreating the journeys of the Tsarist era. The motherland calls. A statue 279 feet or 85 meters dominates a hill in Volgograd. It weighs 8,000 tons or 7,258,000 kilograms and holds a sword 108 feet or 33 meters long, pointed toward the sky. It was built in 1967 to commemorate the Battle of Stalingrad, where over 1 million people died between 1942 and 1943. "200 steps lead to the base, one for each day the battle lasted, and it was the bloodiest combat of World War II. Those who climb the monument find engraved the names of 7,000 fallen soldiers, while from hidden loudspeakers, war songs resound. Ingushetia. The smallest republic in Russia, extends among the mountains of the northern Caucasus. Stone towers rise on slopes where medieval villages resist 800 years of history. These constructions served as defense and dwelling, with each family having its own tower, and some reached 98 feet or 30 meters in height. Here there is also the Vovnushki complex, which clings to 2 rocky spurs and seems to grow from the mountain itself, having been built with interlocked stones without mortar. Swallow's Nest Castle. A castle clinging to a cliff on the Black Sea at 131 feet or 40 meters above the waves. It was built in 1912 by a German baron who wanted a residence facing the water, following the style of medieval German castles. The structure measures 33 feet by 66 feet, or 10 meters by 20, and rests on a rock that the sea has been eroding for centuries, threatening to collapse with every storm. In 1927, an earthquake cracked the cliff, and since then, restoration interventions keep walls and foundations standing. The castle currently hosts exhibitions and is reached via 1,200 steps carved into the rock. Kaliningrad. A Russian enclave squeezed between Poland and Lithuania and separated from the rest of the country by hundreds of miles or hundreds of kilometers. This city was called Königsberg and belonged to Prussia, then was destroyed during World War II and rebuilt by the Soviets. Here, the philosopher Immanuel Kant was born, with his tomb guarded next to the Gothic Cathedral, which is the only medieval building that survived the bombings. The city center was rebuilt with wide boulevards in Soviet style, dominated by massive buildings and victory monuments. The port on the Baltic Sea hosts the Russian fleet, while guarding nearby beaches of amber that the sea has deposited on the sand for millennia. It should be emphasized that 90% of the world's amber comes from these coasts. Vyborg Castle. A Swedish fortress founded in 1293 on an island in the Gulf of Finland. The Tower of St. Olaf dominates the landscape, 262 feet or 80 meters high, and offers panoramas of a city that has changed flags 7 times. Vyborg passed from Sweden to Russia in 1710, then to Finland in 1918, and returned Soviet in 1940. The walls have seen sieges, battles, bombardments, and every stone tells of different dominations. The castle today hosts a museum, while the city preserves Finnish architecture, Lutheran churches, and Hanseatic houses along cobblestone streets. Lake Kezenoyam. the highest lake in the northern Caucasus, at about 6,130 feet, or 1,869 meters above sea level, set among mountains that protect it from winds. The water reaches depths of 243 feet, or 74 meters, fed by underground springs that maintain a constant temperature all year. Here lives a species of trout that exists nowhere else, adapted to these cold waters over millennia. The lake is also surrounded by pastures where shepherds bring flocks during summer. Yekaterinburg. It is Russia's fourth largest city by inhabitants, at the border between Europe and Asia. An obelisk marks the boundary between the two continents, planted where the Ural Mountains geographically divide the world. Here in 1918, the family of Tsar Nicholas II was shot in the cellar of a house that today no longer exists. In its place rises the Cathedral on the Spilled Blood, built in 2003 on the exact site of the execution. Today, the city attracts visitors with its wide boulevards, museums, theaters, and the lively historic center, which develops along the banks of the Iset River. Khibiny Nature Reserve. One of Russia's oldest nature reserves, established in 1931. At the center flows the Suna River, which plunges for 33 feet or 10 meters, creating the Khibiny waterfall, which is often considered the second lowland waterfall in Europe by flow rate, after those of the Rhine. The coniferous forest covers hundreds of miles, or hundreds of kilometers, where centuries-old pines alternate with birches that whiten in the landscape. Here live brown bears, lynxes, and moose that traverse landscapes with over 500 plant species, many of which grow only in this area, protected by a climate that mixes Arctic and continental influences. In summer, white nights allow walking until late among trees illuminated by twilight. Nizhny Novgorod. A city of 1,200,000 inhabitants, where the Oka River flows into the Volga. The red brick Kremlin has watched over the confluence for about 500 years, built when the city defended Moscow from eastern invasions. Inside its walls is found the Church of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, one of the oldest religious buildings in the city, with its characteristic domes. Along the Chikhalov staircase, one descends to the river, crossing 500 steps that cut the hill and offer panoramic views. The historic center preserves 19th century merchant palaces, testimony to when it was one of the main commercial crossroads between Europe and Asia. The cable car, finally, crosses the Volga, suspended at 282 feet or 86 meters high, and connects the two banks in 7 minutes of travel over the water. Khibiny Mountains. They rise in the Kola Peninsula, beyond the Arctic Circle. The peaks reach 3,900 feet or 1,200 meters, shaped by glaciers that carved U-shaped valleys. The city of Kirovsk lives at the foot of the mountains, with 30,000 inhabitants who work on ski slopes or in mines, because underground here hide deposits of rare minerals. The trails cross rocky plateaus where only mosses and lichens grow, while glacial lakes dot the valleys with transparent waters. Novosibirsk. Russia's third city by inhabitants, was born in 1893 in the heart of Siberia as a camp for workers building the railway bridge over the Ob River, and then grew around the Trans-Siberian Railway itself. Today, that bridge over half a mile or more than 800 meters long connects the two banks and carries trains between Europe and Asia. The city is cut by Krasny Avenue, which is the main artery, and crosses Soviet squares and markets where local products are sold. Then there is the Cathedral of Alexander Nevsky, which was one of the first stone buildings in the city, with its ochre-red facade and golden dome. The Opera House, moreover, is one of the largest in the world and can host 2,000 spectators. Sviazhsk. An island in the Volga River, extends for 1.2 square miles or 3 square kilometers. Here, Ivan the Terrible founded a fortress in 4 weeks, assembling prefabricated wooden structures to besiege Kazan. Orthodox churches are reflected in the water, while fortified monasteries enclose ancient frescoes. During the Soviet era, the island became a prison camp, then a psychiatric hospital, and finally was abandoned. Today, 200 inhabitants live among restored walls, and UNESCO has recognized this place as a World Heritage Site. Tyulyuk. Among the folds of the southern Ural Mountains, this village guards one of the last Bashkir communities that still practice nomadic herding. Here, families follow the rhythm of the seasons, moving flocks between summer pastures at altitude and protected valleys in winter. Yurts alternate with wooden houses, while women weave carpets with patterns handed down through generations. The Ai River crosses the territory, bringing water to the herds, and in cold months the landscape transforms into a sea of white, where only chimney smoke reveals human presence. The Bashkir language still resounds in the streets, mixing with Russian, and traditional festivals gather families around local dishes. Yaroslavl. One of the cities of the Golden Ring, with 1,000 years of history along the Volga River. Founded in 1010 by Prince Yaroslav the Wise, it grew as a commercial center between Moscow and the north. The historic center guards 65 Orthodox churches, fortified monasteries, and merchants' houses decorated with colored maholika. The riverfront comes alive in summer with outdoor cafes and tourist boats, while in winter, ice covers the Volga, transforming it into a white expanse. During the Soviet era, it became an industrial hub with tire and engine factories that today still employ thousands of people. Tomsk. In Siberia, there exists a city where wood speaks through decorated windows, with each facade telling stories carved by hand. Tomsk was born as a fortress in 1604, and today preserves hundreds of wooden buildings that transform the streets into an open-air museum. Here, the first Siberian university opened its doors in 1878, attracting minds from across the empire. The climate gives winters at -22 degrees Fahrenheit or -30 degrees Celsius and brief, intense summers, while the Tom River crosses a city that has made knowledge and artisan tradition its identity. Among snow and forests, this city resists, witness to an architecture that elsewhere has almost disappeared. Cape Tobizin. The Russian coast breaks off in the Sea of Japan at a promontory where wind sculpts volcanic rocks, and the ocean crashes with constant force. Cape Tobizin extends into the sea and is a place where nature shows its power without mediations. The black cliffs testify to ancient eruptions, while the Pacific waves have smoothed every surface for millennia. Here, fishermen know dangerous currents and rich depths, and lighthouses guide ships through sudden fogs. Ufa. Two rivers meet here, and at their confluence, Ufa grew. This city is a crossroads where Russian culture meets Bashkir and Tatar culture, and where mosques alternate with Orthodox churches. It produces about 1/3 of Russia's refined oil, and its industries have fueled the country for decades. But beyond factories, there are monuments, nature, and an established musical tradition. Between oil and ballet, and between Europe and Asia, Ufa represents the complexity of a territory where different identities have coexisted for centuries. Golden Temple of Buddha Shakyamuni. It is the largest Buddhist temple in Europe and rises in the capital of the Kalmykia region. A golden statue of 29.5 feet, or 9 meters, dominates the main hall, surrounded by frescoes that narrate the life of Buddha. The structure counts 7 levels, representing the 7 steps toward enlightenment, and welcomes pilgrims from all over Russia. The temple was inaugurated in 2005 after 70 years in which Soviet communism had prohibited all religious practice. Concluding this visual journey through Russia, we moved from the charm of its cities to the most extraordinary landscapes, exploring together not only places, but also curiosities that make every corner of this land unique. We hope that the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the extraordinary richness of this fascinating country.